The studio lights were hot, unforgiving. The air in the room, though chilled by industrial vents, felt thick with silent anticipation. Camera lenses pointed like loaded barrels at the stage, where the country's two most talked-about political voices, Karoline Leavitt and Jasmine Crockett, stood toe-to-toe under a scrutiny as sharp as broken glass. The debate had raged for 40 minutes. Policy, budget, reform, buzzwords thrown like darts. But beneath it all, tension simmered. This wasn't just politics, it was personal. Karoline adjusted the collar of her cream blazer with the elegance of someone who had rehearsed not just her lines, but her posture, her breath, even the moment she would blink. Across from her, Jasmine, strong-willed, intelligent, sharp-tongued, carried the weight of her own scars behind poised eyes. And then it happened. "I admire your passion, Jasmine," Karoline said smoothly, her voice honeyed with sarcasm. "But maybe tonight isn't the best time to lecture anyone on integrity. Not when some people have ghosts they still keep locked in hotel rooms." Silence. For a moment, everything froze. The audience, the moderators, the viewers watching at home. It wasn't the words themselves. It was the venom behind them, the intentional ambiguity, the dagger hidden in a smile. Jasmine blinked once, then again. Her composure cracked barely. A flicker of panic crossed her features, chased by a flash of something darker. Rage, maybe, or heartbreak. "You want to go there?" Jasmine's voice was low, unshaken, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water. "Say what you really mean, Karoline." But Karoline didn't need to say more. The damage was done. Cameras zoomed in like vultures circling the wounded. Hashtags lit up in real time. Hashtag hotel room ghosts. Hashtag Karoline goes. Savage hashtag Jasmine silenced. Within minutes, Twitter exploded. Newsrooms scrambled for sources. Talk shows cut into scheduled programming. What was Karoline referring to? And why did Jasmine, usually unshakable, look as if someone had ripped open an old wound live on national television? Somewhere in the back of the studio, a producer whispered, "Cut to commercial," but it was too late. The blood was in the water, and everyone wanted to know. What happened in that hotel room? What secret had Karoline just weaponized? And why now, of all nights? 2 years earlier, before the spotlight burned so brightly and words became weapons, Jasmine and Karoline were not adversaries. In a world ruled by ambition and polished smiles, they had stood side by side, rising stars behind a thunderous campaign that promised to reshape America. They weren't friends. Not at first. Just two women playing chess on the same board, whispering strategy behind closed doors, while the cameras focused on someone else. Jasmine was the kind of brilliance that didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. She spoke in facts, moved with quiet confidence, and kept everyone at arm's length. But her strength came with a price. Behind her composure was a storm of buried pain. She had learned early to wear strength like armor, not out of pride, but survival. Her childhood was a maze of shadows she rarely spoke of, especially the night. Her uncle, a respected community leader, was found dead in a motel room under suspicious circumstances. The case was buried fast, declared accidental overdose. Jasmine knew the truth. He hadn't been alone. Karoline, on the other hand, had never known silence. She was raised to command rooms, born into power like it was part of her DNA. Her father, William Leavitt, was a kingmaker in a suit. Cold, brilliant and ruthless. He coached her behind closed doors, like a general grooming his finest soldier. Charm them first, he'd say, then cut when they least expect it. Still, Karoline saw something in Jasmine, a spark she didn't have, something raw. She admired it, envied it, and when Jasmine let her guard down one night after a long campaign fundraiser, over too many drinks and too much truth, Karoline listened closely. Jasmine's voice had trembled as she confessed, "There are things I can't let come out. Not just for me, for my family. If it ever got out, I'd be done. And not just politically." Her eyes were glassy, her fingers clenched around the stem of a wine glass. It wasn't just abuse, it was covered up by people with power. Karoline nodded, her tone soft. "You're safe with me." She said it like a vow. In that moment, something shifted. For Jasmine, it was trust. For Karoline, it was leverage. Jasmine's partner, Malik, had always felt uneasy about Karoline. "She's too polished," he'd warned. "People like her don't collect friends. They collect secrets." But Jasmine dismissed it. "She's not like them," she said, not fully believing herself. Malik was protective, intuitive. He saw through things. But he couldn't stop what had already been set in motion. At campaign headquarters, Karoline's father had pulled her aside after Jasmine's confession. "The Crockett girl," he muttered. "What does she fear?" She paused. "Losing control," she replied. He smiled, "Then find a way to give it to her. Just long enough for her to hand it back." There was a power imbalance that went unspoken. Jasmine's brilliance lit rooms, but Karoline controlled the light switch. And beneath every shared laugh, every late-night strategy call, a quiet rivalry bloomed. Jasmine never noticed it fully. Not then, but Karoline did. Because power once tasted is never forgotten, and secrets, they never stay buried. Present day, Jasmine's name had begun to echo in circles Karoline once controlled. She wasn't just gaining momentum, she was rewriting the narrative. Her proposals for sweeping reforms, community-led policing, and mental health funding weren't just policies, they were movements. People saw her not as another politician, but as a symbol of defiance against the establishment. For the first time, Karoline's carefully choreographed world began to crack. She watched Jasmine on the evening news, standing in front of a crowd that hung on her every word. "This isn't about left or right," Jasmine declared, fire in her eyes. "It's about truth. It's about finally doing what no one else had the courage to do." Applause roared through the screen. Karoline stared, her expression tight. The calls from party brass started soon after. "She's outshining you," one strategist whispered, "and that makes her dangerous." Another was more blunt. "If you don't destroy her now, she'll be the nominee next cycle." Karoline knew what they wanted. And more importantly, what they needed. She didn't have to lie. Just reshape the truth. So she opened her private archive. Text messages, old recordings, notes from late-night conversations, and began feeding selective pieces to media insiders. Not all at once, just enough to raise eyebrows. A leaked email suggesting Jasmine pressured a whistleblower to stay silent. An anonymous tip hinting she once interfered in a family abuse investigation. Journalists ran with it, dressing. Speculation in enough fact to feel credible. Jasmine's team scrambled for damage control. The first time she saw the headline, "Hidden History, Crockett's Unspoken Scandal," she sat frozen in her apartment. Malik standing behind her, fists clenched. "Who's doing this?" he asked, though the answer hung heavy between them. Jasmine didn't respond. Her breath was shallow, her eyes scanning the screen like it might rewrite itself. Then came the social media attacks. Justice warrior or hypocrite? What really happened in 2008? Trolls dug into old court records, photos from her youth. They didn't find much, but they didn't need to. The scent of scandal was enough. Karoline watched the chaos unfold from her office window. Expression unreadable, but guilt crept in. Quiet, insistent. In flashes, she remembered Jasmine's voice, trembling over a glass of red wine. I was just a kid. I thought it would all go away if I stayed quiet. Still, she justified it. Politics isn't friendship, it's survival. Jasmine became restless. Sleep eluded her. She started questioning everyone, her aides, Malik, even herself. She spoke less in meetings, second-guessed decisions, avoided mirrors. You're slipping, Malik warned one night. You need to fight back. I don't even know who I'm fighting, she whispered. But deep down, the suspicion festered. Only one person had known every buried truth. Only one had smiled while she broke. Then the invitation came. A televised debate. Jasmine versus Karoline. Prime time. No filters, no pre-screened questions. Just the two of them and the truth between their teeth. Jasmine accepted without hesitation. Malik stared at her. You sure you're ready for this? Turned to him, voice steadier than it had been in weeks. I'm not, but I'm done hiding. And somewhere across the city, Karoline opened her debate briefing folder. Her father's voice echoing in her mind. Control the narrative. Or the narrative controls you. The battlefield was set, and neither woman planned to lose. The studio lights bore down with the intensity of judgment. Beneath them, Jasmine adjusted her mic, her fingers trembling slightly as she clasped them in her lap. Across from her sat Karoline, poised, chin lifted, a mask of elegance carefully lacquered over something far colder. The host welcomed viewers, offered rehearsed smiles, and reminded the audience of the stakes. But the tension in the room wasn't political. It was personal. Jasmine had rehearsed for every question. Policy reform, corruption scandals, even immigration statistics. She was ready. But what she wasn't prepared for was the moment the host leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he asked, Ms. Crockett, a series of anonymous tips have emerged regarding an incident from your past. A closed investigation involving family matters. Would you care to clarify? The air grew still. Jasmine's throat tightened. Every instinct told her to respond, to bury it, spin it, deny it if she had to. But something else, something deeper, paralyzed her. That secret wasn't just hers. It belonged to a frightened version of herself, one who had survived shame, wrapped in silence. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come, and then, like a blade sliding between ribs, Karoline leaned in with calm precision. Some wounds don't heal, she said softly, voice echoing through the studio like a slow verdict. Not when. You keep picking the same kind of poison. The sentence hung mid-air, cryptic yet sharp. A hush fell over the crowd. The meaning was ambiguous, but it didn't need to be. Every camera zoomed in on Jasmine. Her pupils widened. Her lips quivered. For the first time since entering the public eye, she looked small, not because she was weak, but because she'd just been undressed by someone who once held her while she cried. Gasps rippled through the audience. Phones lit up. Hashtags bloomed like bruises across timelines. Jasmine stared at Karoline, and for a moment her pain turned to fury. Her eyes blazed, not at the accusation, but at the betrayal, that memory. of a drunken night 2 years ago, of whispered confessions and trembling hands, was never supposed to be a weapon. You knew what that did to me, Jasmine muttered under her breath, voice cracking. And still, Karoline looked away. Just for a second, but it was long enough. Long enough for guilt to creep through her composure. Jasmine stood. Her legs felt like iron, her spine barely holding her upright. "I'm done with this circus," she said into the mic, voice raw, not bothering to conceal the tears pooling in her eyes. She walked off stage, not in defeat, but in collapse, dragging behind her the weight of trust shattered and dignity scorched. Karoline watched her leave, and though the applause came, not for her words but for the drama, they felt like echoes in a hollow room. The cameras lingered on her face, expecting a smile, maybe a closing remark. But Karoline said nothing. Her moment of victory had already begun to taste like ash. The screen faded to black. Yet, across millions of homes, the story had just begun. In the days that followed the debate, the air thickened with opinion, speculation, and an unsettling quiet between the two women who once dared to believe they could change everything. Jasmine disappeared from public view, her team offering no interviews, no clarifications, just a single statement posted at midnight. Truth costs, pain teaches, and betrayal? It doesn't just end careers, it ends trust. The message wasn't defensive, nor was it apologetic. It was something heavier, something personal. While some mocked it as vague, others, especially those who knew the weight of unspoken trauma, understood its depth. Hashtags shifted. The outrage machine began to sputter, and sympathy, once withheld, started to crawl back toward her like sunlight creeping through storm clouds. Karoline, meanwhile, basked briefly in the glow of victory. News pundits praised her control, her precision, her poise. But beneath those headlines, a different current swirled. Activists called her out for exploiting a personal pain. Former allies stopped returning her calls. And one journalist, relentless and sharp-eyed, published a damning piece that pierced through Karoline's facade. The article revealed that the leak hadn't been spontaneous. Karoline's father, a shadowy figure in the party's inner circle, had issued the ultimatum. If you don't destroy her, she'll destroy you. The revelation shifted public perception again, this time exposing Karoline not as a strategist, but as a pawn. Alone in her apartment, Karoline stared at the wall where framed awards and campaign photos once hung. Most were gone now, taken down after the article aired. The silence was deafening. Her reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Hardened, hollow, nothing like the idealist who once believed politics could be clean. Meanwhile, Jasmine returned to the town that had shaped her scars. It was quiet there, untouched by the frenzy. She walked past the rusted playground where it all began, past the home that never felt safe. Standing at the edge of a creek where she once drowned her screams, she let the silence swallow her. She didn't cry, she didn't speak, but in that stillness something shifted. Not forgiveness, never that, but a reclaiming of what was taken. And with that, the story, bloody, bitter, but hers again, finally began to close. The storm had passed, but its residue lingered like a bitter aftertaste that neither time nor silence could erase. Alone now, separated by distance and scandal, both women lived in the echoes of choices that could never be undone. Jasmine sat by a dimly lit window, tracing patterns on the condensation with fingers that had once pointed in protest. now trembling with reflection. Her eyes, once fierce and certain, stared into the dark like it might finally answer her. "Some secrets aren't buried," she whispered to herself, her voice low and tired. "They're just waiting for the wrong person to dig." She wasn't angry anymore, just emptied. What Karoline had dragged into the light wasn't a skeleton. It was a wound she'd stitched shut with ambition, hoping no one would notice it bled when touched. But Karoline noticed, and she didn't just touch it, she tore it open for everyone to see. Miles away, Karoline moved through a house that felt more like a museum than a home. Awards collected dust. Mirrors were covered. Her reflection had become unbearable. She passed the room where her father once paced, issuing demands in the name of legacy. Now it was just her, and the weight of what she'd done. Looking out into the night, she spoke to no one. Power changes you, but guilt shows you who you really are. She thought winning would feel different, but victory, soaked in blood, and betrayal offered no warmth, only silence and a chilling clarity. In the end, they both paid, not in courtrooms, not on social media, but in the quiet, in the mirror, in the loneliness of knowing that truth doesn't always set you free. It sometimes imprisons you in regret. In the race for control, they both lost pieces of themselves. Truth hurts. Betrayal destroys. But facing the mirror, that's the real punishment.